And we are live. So happy Thursday, everyone. I hope the sun is shining where you guys are. I'm in sunny London. It's boiling. I'm feeling a bit smug because I've got an aircon unit running there. So Greta Thunberg won't be very happy, but I am. So today we've got Mr. Nick Teige on the call. Nick has been working with us for the last few months in the 1%. By my account, he's absolutely smashed it and he's doing really, really well. But I want you to hear from the horse's mouth, and Nick's going to explain where he's at and his achievements to date. Before we jump into that, Nick, do you want to introduce yourself, who you are, what do you do?
Yeah, sure. So as Luke said, my name's Nick Teige. I'm based in Ashby-le-Zeus, so smack bang in the middle of England. I run a financial planning practice. I've been a financial planner for about 20 years, but started my own practice about 6.5 years ago. Married, young daughter Lily. She's just coming up to 9, going on 19. So
yeah. Cool. So as we've discussed before, busy man, lots on, and just like everyone else, right? There's lots of moving parts.
Yeah, lots of spinning plates, and I think that's the common theme with the guys that I've met on the 1%. That actually a lot of people are in the same sort of position, that life's busy, work's busy, trying to cram in your social life, everything else that goes around that. There's just more and more pressure in life, and with things like Instagram, there's more expectation, everything to be perfect all the time. So I think you end up internalizing a lot of pressure on yourself anyway, and it's probably worse than actually the reality is. But yeah,
cool. Well, let's rewind a few months into the past. You reached out, we had a conversation, and we decided to start working together. I think you'd probably seen a few of my bits on either Instagram or LinkedIn, and then thought, right, I want to have a chat with Luke. What was going off back then that made you decide to reach out and speak to somebody like me, a coach?
I think probably I was thinking about this earlier. The main trigger point was actually we went to New York in between Christmas and New Year last year, which was fantastic. But I'd kind of had this idea of it was a surprise for my wife and daughter, having this perfect magical 3-4 days, and it didn't quite get to be exactly as I wanted it to be, and then I got more frustrated with that not being, and then I came back and thought, well, the only person that's frustrated with everything is me. And then I think it just resonated one of your posts talking about sort of frustrations and things like that. And that was the kind of trigger. Work was ridiculously busy, and I kind of got to the stage where I'd lost a lot of my own identity, for want of sort of a better description. And I've tried to over I've read multiple self-help books and listened to loads of podcasts and things like that. And I think the mistake I've always set for myself is that I've always set the bar far too high, far too quickly. So I end up then setting myself goals which are probably not achievable or attainable within the timeframes I want to do them in. Excuse me. And then getting more frustrated because that hasn't happened, and then it kind of becomes this perpetual self-cycle then. And we talk about the 1% and aggregation of marginal gains and Kaizen and all those kind of strategies, but it's probably only, don't know why, it was a bit of a light bulb moment that you kind of realize that it works in reverse as well, that actually if everything's just getting gradually worse 1% a year or 1% a week, and that compounds, and actually that has the same effect but from a negative perspective rather than a positive perspective. And I guess I just wanted to make a change, and I think the way that you describe your process and the evidence that you have for that, other people have been in similar sort of situations. Very process driven in how I work with my clients. It's a tried and tested way of doing things, and it gets results. And that was kind of what I wanted, was something that I know, okay, well, if I dedicate myself to this and I agree to it, then I can do it. But also the expectations, it wasn't like, right, I've got to go up at 4:30 in the morning and drink guava juice or whatever.
Yeah, drink raw milk and all that.
Yeah. So all the other things that you kind of see, I wanted something that I could actually put into my life and simplify things rather than actually adding more pressure on myself. So that was kind of, and that's probably a bit of a waffle, but
no, not at all.
That was where I came from, really.
And I think what you're describing there, Nick, is not belittling where you're at, but it's a very common narrative with a lot of the gents, or pretty much all the gents that I work with. And it's this, I think, work and business in a pretty good spot, but it's kind of cannibalized a lot of everything else, and almost where you're at within that your words, that it takes your identity, because things like being fit, strong, healthy, present, and not stressed, and not work taking over everything. Well, then what can happen is, like you said, incrementally, drip, 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 you get to this point where like work's all consuming, and that's quote unquote going well, but but you kind of sacrificed yourself, your own identity, physical and mental well-being at the altar of that. And then it's a bit like, what's it all about? Then if you apply that kind of type A, let's go, let's really push it mentality that you're doing at work to yourself, it's like, well, I want to be able to do X, Y, and Z. And then you try and do it and it's not possible. And then you feel bad about that. It just becomes, like you said, that compounding negative cycle. And that's where that trap where people say, well, I want to get a bit fitter. I want to be a bit more present. I don't want to be stressed. And so they think that they need to create more time to do that. And so it's like, well, I don't have any time. So how's it possible? Or the things that you think you need to do, like it's either that or nothing. And not realizing, and this is what we'll get onto, I think, that there's a middle ground, right? And it's been able to sort of take a step back and change that. Because that's that trap. It's like, oh, well, I can't exercise. I'm using exercise as an example. Well, because I ain't got an hour a day to go to a gym. Okay, how about 10 minutes in the morning? You know what I mean? That was like, but and that's not to be trite, but it's sort of like building from that point, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's a lot of comparisons, I think, in how we work with clients and how you work with clients in terms of understanding what somebody's goals are, what their motivations are, what they're trying to achieve, and why. And I spend a lot of time with my clients making sure that they're doing what they want to do to get the most out of life. And I kind of feel like I wasn't doing that myself. So it was almost like I'm great at giving everybody else this advice to do this, but then I'm not taking my own advice. And again, it's that kind of, well, nobody else is going to change this unless I do it. And that accountability piece. And I think that's also what I like about the 1%, that, the 8-week program that I did initially, because you've got guys that are, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ahead of you or 2 or 3 weeks behind you. A lot of the challenges that you have, they've had or they've got answers to or solutions to, and it's that wisdom of crowds really that actually you do use it almost like a sounding board. And there's nothing in there which is rocket science, or you kind of look at that and think, oh my god, that's so revelatory. But it's actually how do you make sure that works and you do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I think, and I want to touch on and move forward in a second as to where we are today and what we've achieved, Nick. But I think we often think we're unique, special snowflakes, and we need this wonderful, magical, perfect way of doing things because we're so different and unique. And you are a special snowflake, Nick. You are unique, as am I, right? But on the flip, actually, the principles of the things that we need built into our life are the same. And it's not rocket science and it's not shiny. Like, you boil personal development down, it's basically like, commit to doing something, do it. If it's hard and difficult, it's probably the right thing to do. Repeat. But it's been able to filter that through a lens of life, work, family, business, and actually apply that practically. And I think often we think, I've got this pretty big existential problem, so I need this big, massive, life-shattering solution. It's not really. It's all the little basics. But when we're in the fog and, you're in it, it's hard to see that, right?
Yeah, I think, when I sort of put a post on before about sort of the woodcutter analogy, it was very much that situation where you do need to stop and sharpen your axe. And actually all I was doing was whacking the trees with a blunter and blunter axe every day, and it was making no progress with it. So the thing that did appeal and the thing that I do enjoy with the 1% is that it's not earth-shatteringly different day to day. It's not like a case of, right, I've now got to suddenly completely go 180 on what I'm doing. It's, well, actually, you look back and think, I've come quite far from what I've done. I've not kind of noticed where I've been on that journey. But it's, I think that's sort of when we very first sort of started working, I kind of said, I feel like I'm constantly just treading water, that my head is just bobbing above the surface all the time. And I want to get to the stage where I can take those weights off and kind of swim freely. And that's kind of where I feel I am today. And actually to be able to achieve that in not a massive amount of time is, I think, testament to the process.
Awesome. Well, that being said, that's a nice segue to sort of fast forward to where we are today. So that's where we were. Like, now having come through the process, and like I said, we're still continuing to work together because there's a continuation of what we can do. And I always say, I talk about Nick version 2 or you version 2, right? There's levels to that. So it's like, what next? And we're currently doing that. But as we sit today, what have been your key successes and achievements having come through the process so far, would you say?
I mean, certainly in terms of mental, physical health, I'd say it's nothing short of transformational, to be honest. And I know that probably sounds a little bit gushing, but it's the truth. I've lost well over a stone without doing anything crazy in terms of sort of diet, just a bit of sensible sort of nutritional advice and following that. In terms of mental health, things like the small bits of meditation a day and the cold showers, which I've finally started to enjoy, which you promised me I would do, but it took longer than you said. But I am there. All these things, I kind of feel like I'm alive again. It's probably the best way I can describe it. I know previously I kind of felt like I was a husk, and now I've kind of I feel like I'm myself again. I'm certainly more present in terms of spending time with my wife and my daughter and my friends. So prioritizing that, and if you look at sort of well-being as a collection of things, it's not making sure that you're not talking about work-life blend. So rather than work-life balance, I'm not giving up one thing for something else. It's how do you get all these moving parts, and how do you get the plates you got spinning the right ways at the right time and complementing each other. It's probably my biggest takeaway, that I kind of not there yet. There's still things that I want to improve, but certainly I kind of feel like I'm living again rather than surviving as myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, going through the motions, and I think that speaks to what you said earlier in terms of that getting your identity back. Because if you feel like you are a bit of a husk, you just you're just surviving and firefighting. Actually, when it feels like your feet are firmly flat on the floor, you've got full momentum, you're feeling good physically, mentally, emotionally, you're showing up as you want. That's a real positive place to sort of run your life from, right? And like you said, it's not perfect, but it's having those constituent parts to result in that being an emergent property and you being in control of that. That's a much more empowered place to operate from, because you're controlling those inputs. You know what's coming in to result in that, and you're the one who's fundamentally in control of it. Now, we don't want to try and control everything, because that way madness lies as well. But I think having more structure and agency around what you do, around your own identity and how you want to show up, that's it. Because if the part of your identity, which is present, good dad, focused, does what he wants to do, looks good physically, takes care of himself, and that's just been flattened for a while, that doesn't feel great. You taking control of that and you owning those pieces that result in that, I think that feels great. And so when you said that, I feel like you're alive again. It's like, yeah, you've got your spark back, your mojo back, to quote the sage that is Austin Powers.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I think from a physical perspective, the doing the exercise, I came from a background where before I had my daughter, I was a sub 3 hour marathon runner. I used to do Ironman triathlons and things, so I was in good shape physically, and that's kind of gradually gone to the dad bod and all of that. And actually then that starts, you're not feeling great about yourself physically, then you probably don't care quite so much about what you eat, so therefore you feel slightly worse, and there's that continual knock-on effect. And I think it's understanding that the small steps that you take, actually just those reinforcing those positive habits, the impact that will then have on something else positive. It's almost like a domino effect. Actually, if you eat better, then you'll train better. If you train better, then you feel better. If you feel better, mentally you're sharper. If mentally sharper, you can be more present, you're not stressed. And it's all those small things. Actually, it's a multiple compounding effect rather than just one thing that's having it. Is that knock on, really.
Yeah, it's the sum of the parts versus one magic thing. And some of the things that we do in isolation make you feel good, and that's great. But it's I think you are the sum product of your daily actions, habits, behaviors, and choices. And I think we all want to be walking around looking and feeling as we want, as a byproduct of living your life, not because you're doing something weird and wonderful or that you don't understand. And so I think that's what you're saying there, right? And so actually, all the little things add up, and if mostly compound into a good place, well, then you feel good, And
and I think when you've got that support network around you as well, that there are some days then I didn't manage to do absolutely everything I set out to do, and that's okay, and not beating myself up around it. Whereas when before it's like, right, I'm going to do 10,000 steps every single day, and then I'll do it for 5 days, and I won't do it for a day, and then the world's terrible place again, and what's the point? I've failed. I might as well not do this. Whereas life gets in the way, and that's the reality. It's not going to be a perfect day every day, and you realise that the other guys on the course as well, that everyone's the same. We're all trying to do our best, and actually, if we can show up and it's 9 times out of 10, then that's fantastic. It's better than doing it 2 times perfectly and then never doing it again. So.
Yeah, and that whole mindset around, well, this has happened, so fuck everything, or this has happened, so what can I do? And having levels and layers. A client, another client I spoke to the other day, he had this concept which I really liked of he's into his golf and he's got a golf coach. It's one of my one-to-one clients, and he's got like his A, B, C, and D game. so it's his A game is like, right, he's on, he's banging like, amazing drives, everything's perfect, he's putting long puts, he's on point, and so like he knows how to approach that and what he needs to do when it's his A game day. There might be a B game day where it's all right, most shots are pretty good, he can slice some good stuff, but there's a few things to learn, and he needs to apply a certain model. Then there's a C game, which is probably 3 holes in a row have been shite, and then he has to go, right, I've got to somehow pull this back and work on stuff. And there's a way that he'll approach that. And there's D game when everything's just a car crash. And he's like, well, okay, what's the minimum I can get out of this? And so it's recognizing where you're at when you're on the golf course there, of like, what I'm at. Now, trying to apply an A game day when you're having a D game day is going to result in your golf clubs going through someone's car. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like, well, let's be relative to where we're at. And I think that's quite a nice analogy for what we're talking about here, is life's always going to go, puff. And it's like, well, given that, what do we do? Now, this might be the thing that we want to do, A game, but we might be on a day that's a D game, but there's still something you can do. And I think that's the empowered place versus I can't do that, therefore nothing, therefore I've messed up. It's like, no, well, what can we do? And I think like letting go of your ego and looking at your life, and that's where I think real discipline is. It's just recognizing what is possible and what you can do versus it's game over because you haven't hit something perfectly, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think, a lot of the tools and the things that you learn through the 1%, it's almost like that coping mechanism as well, that all of a sudden, yeah, I am having a bad day, or this hasn't gone quite right, or the mistake's been made over there, or whatever it is. But actually, okay, let's just take a step back and reframe and almost sort of rewind a little bit and say, okay, well, that's where we are. How can we move forward from this? And just sort of cracking on with it, rather than, again, it kind of spiraling, which it probably has done, the last 5 years or something. If I have a bad day, then it's a really bad day.
yeah, let's make it really bad.
Yeah.
So what would you say? You've touched on that a little bit there, Nick, already, but what would you say have been your sort of key takeaways or learnings so far, having come through the process to date?
Yeah, I think just reiterate what I said before, that life isn't going to be perfect, and actually it's okay, if things don't quite go to plan, but also having those mechanisms to say, well, actually, what would my perfect day like? If I can do this, this, and this, then actually it does keep you on track. And those small incremental changes is probably the biggest takeaway, that Rome wasn't built in a day, as they always sort of say, and that's the truth. If I look at where I am now to where I was 2, 3, 4 months ago, it's massively different. But it's been a small changes week by week by week by week. It's not been all of a sudden I've just gone bang and it's happened. You kind of look back and it's that journey that's been good. The key takeaways that I probably say is that you need to start. That there's no perfect time. I know we actually spoke sort of before Christmas, before I started on the program, but the reality is if you wait for all the stars to align before you start something, it's never going to happen.
No.
So sometimes you just need to bite the bullet and get on with it. And there's no the best time to start is yesterday, and the second best time is today.
Yeah, there's that cliche phrase as well. It's like, if you could look back in 12 months and imagine you had started 12 months ago, where would you be, versus where you are today? And it's and that's the dichotomy, I think, with yourself, Nick, and lots of the gents I work with. It's like, okay, I'm recognizing I want to change. I need to do something, but I've got so little time. I'm so busy, so much going on anyway. How can I possibly do that? Therefore, I'll just try and wait until it gets quieter. But as we know, that's not how life works. It never gets quieter. There is no quieter time. And it's like chasing the pot of gold at the end of a rainbow that never actually turns up, because there's always another thing, there's something else. And that is life. Unfortunately, life is problems and strife, but it's about what we do about it. And for me, it's rather than looking at this like I've got to shoehorn something weird and wonderful into my life, which is already crazily busy. It's like, no. Any process, I believe, like we're discussing, and with the 1%, it's like, no, this should help you live your life better, and you should show up better, versus we're just car crashing it with something else. But I think that's quite often how people frame it. It's like, I need to do something different, which is kind of true. But for me, it's more like, what do we need to do within your life to get where you need to be? And it's subtle, but it's an important nuance.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the time side of thing, it's still true. It's a choice of what you do with the hours that you're given. And if I want to spend an hour scrolling through social media memes and why Gareth Southgate's so appallingly bad as manager, apparently, according to everybody, that's my choice to do that. But then I can't moan that I'm feeling tired or I'm lethargic or I'm overweight or whatever, because I've chosen to do that. And actually, the digital detox, it's been been massively changed. And I used to live with my phone in my hand all the time, and I'd be constantly checking messages or emails and things. And actually being able to say, well, no, it's 7 o'clock. There has to be a line where you draw that, and that's now quality time to spend with the family. Then you have to sort of do that. And actually, nothing. I'm not missing anything. I'm not. The time that I'm now committing to make myself better, and therefore the lives of my family better as well, by me showing being the best version I can be of me, is a far better investment than anything else. So.
Yeah, and especially what you just said there around the sort of the technology, the phone detox thing, that kind of speaks into that sort of almost the hidden metric of, well, I don't think I've got enough time. But then if we lift the lid up a bit and start to look, more often than not, in my experience, there is time there. It's just, like you said, not being allocated appropriately, or we're blind to what we're doing. So there's two parts. I think we need more time than we do to achieve the things that we need to do. What we need to do is probably less big and scary than we think, but also there will be time there that's being wasted and not used appropriately with the right lens. But again, when you're in it, you can't see it, and that's the point, right? And it's not that sort of. I see this sometimes, in my feed and network. I follow lots of other coaches, and it's like you get some 22-year-old going, "You got time to watch Netflix? You got time to?" It's like, fuck off! Like you're not 39, 40 odd with kids in the business. Like, just shut up. Sometimes you need to switch off and watch a bit of Netflix. That's okay. But if we peel the lid back again, it's like, well, actually, have I spent 4 hours on my screen scrolling, stressed? Am I checking my emails at midnight? That's the kind of thing that we're talking about. And if we can address those kind of things, in my experience that you're describing, it has an outsized impact on this and how you feel elsewhere, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the key thing is that continual knock on that we sort of spoke about. That actually life is always busy. Life is always going to be challenging, and I don't want to be somebody that wakes up and not looking forward to the day. That's not kind of thinking, right, well, what's the most I can do, and how can I improve my situation or the situation of people that I'm working with or working for or whatever. And I think the frustration I have, which I'm seeing more and more of, is when you look on things like social media. Then actually, it worries me about. I'm going to start on a tangent here, but it worries me for my daughter that she's 9, nearly 10. That the pressure and the expectations of life are unrealistic. And actually, you know what? Yeah, you're right. Sometimes you do just need a day to chill out and recharge your batteries, and that's fine as well. But doing that within a framework where it's healthy,
Exactly.
That's the key thing, really. It's having that framework, and being able to sort of stick to it. So a lot of the habits that I've developed through the 1%, whether that's through the cold showers or the regular exercise or some of the coaching exercises, it's almost holding that mirror up to your face a little bit and say, look, actually, and I think this was one of the things that attracted me initially to working with you, is that you kind of call the bullshit out to say, actually, you're making excuses and you're telling yourself truths that aren't truths, but without being sort of sergeant major about it. And I don't need to be shouted at my pants. It's it's
yeah, exactly.
I'm at an age now where I'm an adult, but sometimes you do just need to have that sort of kick up the arse a little bit.
Well, I think that the nuance there is it's not a drill sergeant. Someone just shouting at you, or something didn't go wrong. Oh, you fucking idiot, or whatever. Well, that doesn't help anyone. So it's like, well, okay, I didn't have time to do that. That didn't happen. Well, why? Oh, this is this. Or why? And then we'll get to the root cause. Okay, well, so the fact is you do have time, but you did this instead. Well, do you reckon if we change that, you can do that instead? Yeah. And then, for example, like, I was too knackered and tired, didn't have enough time to get up to do a workout. What time do you get up? Half 7. Okay. Well, what if you got up at 6? Can't get up at 6. Why can't you get up at 6? Oh, well, because I went to bed at midnight. Why did you go to bed at midnight? Well, because I checked my emails before bed and I was really stressed, and a half bottle of wine. Okay. Well, so maybe do you reckon you could change some of that and then see? Okay. And it's having the mirror to see that, to be able to make those changes. Now, there's no judgment. You do whatever you want to do, but until you can see that, and then you go, oh, and it sounds really obvious sometimes. Like you said, it's not rocket science, but more often than not, the story we tell ourselves of, I ain't got time, I'm too strict, whatever it is, it's superficially true, because it is true. But if you peel the lid back and look at what's going on, where we address the bits that are impacting that, and then all of a sudden, well, you can get up and one of the things I hear, like, I'm not a morning person, and I just have like a wry internal smile. I'm like, okay, and then you find out what else is going on. It's like, well, let's address that and see. So I think that's the nuance in terms of, yes, you want to call it out and say to someone what's going on, but it's not just berating someone for not achieving something we've asked, because that helps no one. I think this has been an awesome call, Nick, and I don't want to take any more of your time, because talking about time, I know you're a very busy man. I hope anyone's watching has got a lot out of it, because I have. Let's say someone's watching this and they are maybe in a similar position to where you were when we first spoke a few months back, kind of know they're not in a great spot, maybe need some help, but not sure about reaching out to a coach or talking to somebody like me. What would you say to someone like that who's kind of on the fence?
Just get on with it. That's the easiest thing is, to be honest, you just got to get on with it. Pull your finger out and be honest with yourself that, you know what, everybody that I spoke to on the 1% or the calls you've had, nobody's gone through anything which you kind of think, oh my God, that's so left field, that's that's why this person's on this call, that's why this person's joined. Everyone's in quite a similar situation. But it works. There's obviously evidence in what you've done. But you can't do anything until you take the first step. So if you're thinking about doing it, you're already sort of halfway there. You just might as well just open the door now and step through it.
Awesome. I think I like that. It's just JFDI.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the reality of it. If you want to get better at golf, you've got to swing a club, haven't you? If you want to get better, I don't know, whatever you want to
finances, you have to start saving. Whatever it is. No, tell you what, Nick, thank you very much. I really appreciate you taking the time. As I said, I think I got a lot out of it. Hopefully anyone who's watching has. If anyone is watching this and they are interested in having a chat, drop me a note in the comments or send me a DM. We can arrange a conversation. In the meantime, have a fantastic week. Nick, thanks again. And yeah, we'll see you soon. Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Cheers.